Another edition of Riding Home, this time brought to you by our friends at Ticket IQ. If you're missing out on tickets to the Peach Bowl, make sure you're grabbing your tickets on Ticket IQ. I've used it. I think we've all talked about that in the past. It's easy to use. The service fees are not insane. Actually, there are none. Kirby Smart went today, Matt, and there was a lot discussed. Some questions about C.J. Stroud and why he recruited him, how much he loved his mother. Um, but this Georgia team practiced today in Atlanta. Ohio State got to Atlanta on Christmas night. We're getting ready for a game that's going to be an important moment in Georgia history.
Absolutely. And it's against a team that Georgia hasn't played since what, 92, 93.
Right.
One of those 2 years. They are a historic program, whether you like it or not. A lot of people in the South don't like Ohio State, and mainly it's because they are consistent. They're consistently good.
Right.
They're always in the hunt for a championship, and once every 10 years, they win one. They're in a position to do it now, and they're going up against the best team in college football. I think everyone can agree, being Georgia. So there aren't a whole lot of other teams out there that Georgia hasn't played that are, big historic programs. They haven't played USC in quite a bit, haven't played Miami, but Ohio State is a team that I think a lot of Georgia fans have wanted to see Georgia play for a while, especially now that Kirby's the head coach. He's got them playing like, an elite premier college football program. And um, they're going to bring it. Ohio State is a top four team. I do think Georgia's going to win the game. I've said that for a few weeks, but I do respect Ohio State and what they bring to the table. Top 10 offense, top three offense. I think if you look at the numbers, top 10 defense, scoring, and total defense, I believe. So they're not bad anywhere, Dean. I'm not sure if they're elite in a whole lot of categories, but there's a lot of strengths. Maybe not, they're not as strong, across the board as Georgia is here, and here. But there aren't a lot of weaknesses either. So I do think that it's going to be a solid game, and I think Georgia wins this one in the fourth quarter.
All right, straight to the point. I mean, I think they win it
Yeah.
in the second half myself. I don't know if it could be before that. We don't know. I think with a passing game the way that Ohio State's got, you're never really out of the game. LSU, I guess, to some degree showed that. We're going to talk about now. You've steered this away from kind of the coaches today. I thought Ryan Day was pretty good today. Um, I do think that Ohio State will win the national championship. I don't know if this is the season that it will happen. Red zone
Under
defense
him. You think under Ryan
under
Day
under
they
Ryan
will?
Day. I do. You want to? We can talk about this. I mean, listen,
Yeah.
it's not, and I've said this so many times. I think people are tired of hearing it, but hey, there's other channels you can go listen to other idiots, right? I mean, um, we just happen to actually cover the team. It's not been a great close to the season for Ohio State. I mean, there's two ways of thinking about that, Matt. Number one, it's not good and it's not going to get better. Number two, it's not good. Now they get to recap or regroup and kind of do their thing. From the Penn State game on, they've allowed at least 30 points three times. So that's three times in 5 games. I think they're going to allow 30 to Georgia. I think the problem there is they didn't score 30 against Northwestern. They didn't score 30 against Michigan. So in 3 of the 5 games, they allowed 30 or more. In 3 of the 5 games, they scored fewer than 30. So it's not great. Now they won all of those games except Michigan. All that said, yeah, I do think I think Ryan Day has. I think he's a very good fit at Ohio State. I think he, in the long term, might be better than Urban because Urban was never gonna be a long term solution anyway. You're talking about a guy in Ryan Day. I think that's lost 5 games. Is that right? It's not many. Do you think what I was suggesting about Ryan Day is inaccurate? I mean, why did you ask it that way? He's gotten so much grief.
Yeah.
I just don't know that the grief is really. I just think they got their ass
Logical
whipped by.
or
Yeah, just got their ass whipped by Michigan, and then maybe we'll get their ass whipped by Georgia. That doesn't mean that say, oh, this, yeah, he has lost. He's lost 5 games total in his entire tenure. I am going to review all 5 of them for you right now. One of them was in 2019 to Clemson on the last play of the game, a ball that if thrown a particular way, is a touchdown, and they're playing for the national championship. That didn't happen. They're not beating LSU, so they're eating a loss somewhere. 2020, Matt, they lose to Alabama, a perfectly adequate loss after they steamrolled Clemson. They don't seem to play well against Northwestern. I'll tell you that. Um, and then in 21, obviously the loss to Michigan was lopsided and not good. The loss to Oregon was a 35-28. That was really a 35-21. So I think there's a touch of a pattern here that they, and when they play quote big games, they don't play well sometimes, and or they lose. That even to me, they've lost twice to Michigan of these five losses, once to Oregon, once to Alabama, once to Clemson. Uh, the only team of those that Georgia's lost to, Matt, is Alabama. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's they don't play well in big games as more as it is
Yeah.
they just weren't the better team. I mean, there's a big difference there, and
Oh,
have not
exactly.
playing your best
Yeah,
in the big game
exactly.
and just not being the better team and losing. But I
Yeah.
don't think they're dropping off anytime soon with Ryan Day at the helm. And
No.
I really have read at places where the Buckeye fans are not happy with him, and I'm thinking, yeah, you lost to Michigan in embarrassing fashion twice, but every loss to Michigan is going to be embarrassing and something that you say over and over that can't happen. But they're
Right.
always going to have a quarterback. They're always going to have a successful passing game compared to the rest of college football. And he's a young guy who can recruit. He knows where the talent is. He spoke about that in the press conference today a little bit. So they're going to have good players. And it seems like Michigan is the only team kind of in their way right now. I don't see Penn State overtaking
No.
Ohio State anytime
No.
soon.
Penn
I think
State
Wisconsin
is
could
not.
get better, but they're not in the
They
same
will.
league. So they're always going to be there. And so I agree with your point earlier. I think that there is a good chance that they, 1 year have this special type of team and
They
can get it
will.
done. I don't think it's going to be this year, though.
So they beat in 19. They beat number 25 Michigan State, number 13 Wisconsin, number 13 Michigan, number 8 Wisconsin before bowing out to Clemson. None of those games were competitive. In 20, they won a tight one against Penn State. They beat Indiana, which was a tight one as well. Northwestern, they won that game by 12. I remember watching that game. I was not impressed,
That's
but I
always
knew
an
they.
ugly game. Just a
Yeah,
classic Big
clearly,
Ten kind of
clearly.
punt fest. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't play Northwestern in 21 in my quick look at things. Last year they lost to Oregon, ranked number 12. Then they beat Penn State. They seem to kind of, with the exception of that one win against Ohio State in 16, I think it was. I'm not sure what James Franklin has accomplished at Penn State, but that's another thing for another day. They lost that game. They beat Penn State by 11. The Purdue, they wiped them out. They beat Michigan State by 100, and then they got really handled by Michigan in that game. They narrowly beat Utah last year. They beat Notre Dame by 11 this year. They did not play well in that game, Matt. That was not what you want to see. I need to see more of the Penn State game. I watched a lot of it. They came back in the third and won that game. How good at the end of the day, and then they got beat. They kind of got throttled by Michigan. At the end of the day, how good is the Big Ten? So my question is, you know, is the Big Ten a better version of the ACC and Ohio State is their Clemson, or is that the wrong, you know, analogy to make?
I think you can
Because
look at it like that. I think the ACC is getting better with Florida State kind of
yes,
getting on the rise a little bit. Miami trying to, but still they're in a bad place right now. North Carolina seems like they kind of know what they're doing. They haven't reached the level that they want to yet, but for North Carolina, they're a pretty good team, right? But
they should be
I don't. I
better.
mean, Ohio State all year we thought was the second best team in the country. So it's going to be them in Michigan for a while. Did someone ask Ryan Day about playing in Atlanta? Because I will say this: if this game were not in Atlanta, I think it would be closer. I just have a real tough time thinking any team is going to come into Mercedes-Benz and beat Georgia right now. So that's got to be really tough. I'd be interested to know how he kind of threw that question away or what kind of coach
Oh,
speak he gave there. But it's definitely a factor in this ball game.
he said this a couple of times, and I want to like this is just a sample of what he said. He said there's a level of urgency that we have to play our best football here in this game. So we're going to continue to prepare as hard as we possibly can on the field, off the field, to make sure we have a great weekend here in Atlanta. So look, I look, it all adds up. And you know, I mean, we you and I know from experience with dog posts that like once you know you have to build it, and it takes time to build it, and that's not just going to get knocked off in a day. And I don't think any one day defines Ohio State any more than a win over Georgia would define them. So if they got beat or lost, I mean, they're a really really good team. He's done an exceptional job, but not unlike Kirby last year, you have to win, right? This moment doesn't happen, Matt. People are still totally doubting Georgia. A year later, there's all sorts of, I don't really even know how to describe it. I mean, everybody thinks they're going to win. Last year, nobody did, and I mean, I am in the camp that thought they would win, think they would win both in both cases actually, but I think it's going to be tough for Ohio State for a lot of reasons. Number one, I think stopping the run. Um, Georgia's offensive line is really quite good, and I don't know what's going to happen with Warren McClendon. It seems to me like he's going to play, but I don't know. I'm just going to stay out of that. Let's just say Marius Mims is there. Um, you got
As
to
good a
stop.
backup as you could put out there.
No
I mean,
kidding. You got to stop these guys, and it's not just
yeah,
about. I mean, like when you think about Broderick Jones and Van Pran and let's just say Amarius or Warren McClendon, it's tough. It's tough for the defense to perform. And the last time we saw both these teams out, and the entire time we saw Georgia play this season, its offensive line could be dominating, and they're going up against a team that's being challenged. I mean, just because you're being challenged doesn't mean you're going to respond, Matt. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is
yeah,
I don't want to hear all this, about. I mean, you got to do it like that. You're
yeah.
doubted.
There's no Buckeye instruction out there to buy because they haven't done
No.
it. You know,
Wow.
um,
Went there. Okay.
it's gonna take some time for them to try to run the ball on Georgia too. Georgia's healthier. I mean, it seems like Ohio
Yes.
State is a little more banged up than Georgia is now. I don't know exactly where Lad McConkey is, if he's close to 100%, more 75, more 50%. I still don't think AD Mitchell is 100%. I think he's getting close to that, but
Yeah, but you got to
I think
100%
Georgia's,
guard
yeah,
both those guys. That's the problem.
yeah, yeah. And I just don't think Ohio State has the manpower to beat the number one team in their backyard the way they're playing right now, especially because Georgia got that monkey off their back. And like you
Yes.
said, I mean, that was huge. I mean, this program is just feels completely different because now there's not a whole,
Totally.
there are some Munsons out there where, a few people are a little nervous about Ohio State. I get that. But at the end of the day, I think most Georgia fans think they're going to win this game. And for good reason, think that they're going to win the national championship. They are the odds-on favorite, but the fact that they've done it before is going to help them in this
I don't
ball game
don't you think that
and in that
matters?
100%,
I mean,
100%.
don't
And yeah, I was going to say when Ryan Day does, whether it's next year, 5 years, or whatever, they're going to feel that too. But right now, the momentum that Georgia had winning that championship absolutely carried on into this year. And you saw it against Missouri when they were down late in the ball game. They played like
yeah,
champions when they needed to.
they did.
And the SEC championship, they got out 35-7 was, I think, the largest lead. When the game, the bigger the stage is, it seems like the best they've played. And you could go back
Mhm.
to the Oregon game too to start the season. Big game, top 10 matchup. Oregon might have been 11, but they brought their A game, and they're bringing their A game every time they need to this year. And I think we're going to see that more in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's my suspicion. I mean, as we go on this week,
Yeah.
there will be other riding homes where we talk about all this stuff, but I don't see. The more I watch Ohio State, the more that I think Georgia has an advantage. I'll just say that. And secondly, um, you're the better team. You're playing in front of your home crowd. Um, that you're the better team is the biggest thing. I mean, Georgia's been the better team and gone on the road in Columbia, uh, uh, Starkville, Lexington, and won all those games with the exception of one of them convincingly. Jacksonville too. You know, you're not going to just roll them over the whole game, but you will beat them the bulk of the time. I think being the better team matters a lot. All right, tomorrow we'll get Stetson and everybody like that. Make sure you're. I want to make sure folks are saying sign up for our newsletter. You're going to miss out. We send it out every single day with a lot of different stuff. We can't cover it all on video. Okay, if you're not subscribing to our newsletter, you're missing out on a substantial part of what we do on Dog Post. Don't miss out on. I mean, Matt wrote something today that you're going to want to read these things, and we can't stream articles. So get on there with the newsletter, and we'll get Stetson, Todd Monken, etc. tomorrow. Matt, we've got practice later this week. Very quickly, I mean, we've not seen practice at Georgia, and coming on an extremely long. I mean, I think we saw some a little bit earlier this year, but we didn't get to see it with the Orange Bowl last year or the national championship. But Thursday and Wednesday practices will be open. Is there anything beyond the obvious with Ladd, AD, and Warren that you're going to be looking for?
It's something other than stretching. I don't know what media availability period we're going to be out there. We're probably
Wouldn't
not
get
going to
too
see
excited.
Stetson
Yeah.
slinging around or anything like that. But I think it's just looking to see what their body language is, knowing that it's a business trip for these guys. You can see if guys are focused or not. But I think with this team, they know how to have fun as well. It seems like a tight knit group. Again, they're all bought in. So a little bit of balanced of focus business trip like and a little loose too. I think they were a very loose team going into the Orange Bowl last year. I think they all had a good time. I think they went to the beach, did a lot of team related activities and had a good time. And you saw they had a really good time on the field down in Hard Rock Stadium. So I think being close to home too, and kind of a lot of in-state guys being with their families for Christmas was a big deal. And they could kind of, be away from the game for a little bit. Now it's time to go, and I think the team is going to be ready.
Last thing, do you think it matters that Georgia got to practice at home today on Monday, uh, and Ohio State traveled Sunday and then practiced in Atlanta on Monday? Do you think either of those things matter?
I do. I think it's the little things. I think a lot of little things add up at the end of the day. And,
Yeah.
with biggest game of the season, with all the eyeballs on you and a chance to play for the national championship, every little thing that is an advantage for you is going to help in the long run. So, yeah, I mean, not being able to have that travel and kind of do their own thing for a little bit longer than the Ohio State program had to do. We might not see it on Saturday, but I'm sure the players enjoyed it and the staff enjoyed that. And they wanted to beat LSU for a lot of reasons. Another one was to play this game in Atlanta, in their backyard, in front of their fans, a place where they've played really well recently. So I do think it's a big deal, a
All right.
little deal, a deal.
Ohio
Yeah.
State has only played 4 road games this year. That's it. They played 8 games at home. So that's another thing to keep thinking about. One of those, of course, was the loss to Michigan. But anyway, thanks for watching Riding Home. We'll see you over on the website. Sign up for the newsletter.